The gunshot echoed through the alley before Asha Washington could process what was happening. Glass shattered somewhere in the darkness, and she pressed herself against the cold brick wall, her heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst through her chest. This wasn't how tonight was supposed to end. This wasn't how any of this was supposed to happen. But then again, the moment she'd stopped to help that crying child 3 weeks ago, her entire life had veered off course into territory she never could have imagined. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. Let me take you back to where it all began, to the night that changed everything. Before we dive into Asha's story, if you believe in the power of kindness even when it's dangerous, hit that subscribe button. Because what you're about to hear will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, loyalty, and the price of compassion. And drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. I want to know how far this story travels. Now, let's go back to that October night in Atlanta, 3 weeks before the gunshot. The neon sign of Rosie's Diner flickered against the rain-slicked pavement, casting fractured light across the empty parking lot. Asha locked the door behind her, the keys cold against her palm, and pulled her thin jacket tighter against the October chill. 2:47 in the morning, another double shift. Another day survived. Her feet ached in her worn sneakers as she started the familiar walk home. 6 blocks through neighborhoods that got progressively darker, progressively quieter, progressively more dangerous with each step. She'd learned to walk with purpose, eyes forward, phone in hand, not using it, just holding it like a talisman against the night. The paycheck from tonight's shift would barely cover the interest on her student loans. The degree in social work that was supposed to lift her out of poverty had instead buried her in debt she'd probably die with. Her parents were gone. Her mother to cancer when she was 19. Her father to a heart attack 2 years later. And she'd learned the hard way that the world didn't care about your story, your struggles, or your dreams. It only cared about what you could produce, what you could pay, what you could prove. At 26, Asha Washington had become very good at surviving. What she'd forgotten was how to truly live. The crying started as she passed Maple Street, a sound so heartbroken, so desperate that it stopped her mid-step. A child. Somewhere in the alley between the abandoned warehouse and the boarded-up grocery store. Her first instinct was to keep walking. This was Atlanta at 3 in the morning. Getting involved in anything, even a crying child, could mean danger she couldn't afford. But the sound continued. Small sobs that spoke of fear and abandonment, and a pain too big for whatever small body was producing them. Asha stood frozen on the corner, her practical mind warring with her compassionate heart. The practical side reminded her of the mugging last month, the woman attacked 2 blocks from here, the news stories about people lured into traps. The compassionate side reminded her that she'd once been a child who needed help, and no one had come. She turned into the alley. The smell hit her first. Garbage and urine, and something else, something metallic that made her stomach turn. Her phone's flashlight cut through the darkness, and she saw him huddled behind a dumpster. A little boy, maybe 5 or 6 years old, with dark hair and Asian features, wearing clothes that looked expensive even in their disheveled state. His face was streaked with tears and dirt, his eyes wide with terror as her light found him. "Hey," Asha said softly, crouching down but keeping her distance. "Hey, sweetie, are you okay?" The boy flinched, pressing himself harder against the wall. He said something in what sounded like Korean, his voice high and frightened. "I'm not going to hurt you," Asha continued, keeping her tone gentle. "Are you lost? Where's your family?" At the word family, the boy's face crumpled, and fresh tears spilled down his cheeks. He said something else in Korean, more urgent this time, and Asha's heart broke a little. Whatever had happened to this child, it was bad enough to leave him alone in an Atlanta alley in the middle of the night. too terrified to ask for help. She should call the police. That was the logical thing to do. But something in the way the boy's eyes widened in panic when she reached for her phone stopped her. He shook his head violently, backing away, and repeated the same Korean phrase over and over. Okay, Asha said, putting her phone away. No police. I get it. She didn't get it. Not really. But she understood fear when she saw it. This child was more afraid of authority than he was of being alone in a dangerous alley. That meant something. Something complicated. Something potentially dangerous. But Asha had already made her choice when she'd turned into this alley. Are you hungry? She asked, miming eating. The boy's eyes locked onto her gesture, and he nodded slowly. Okay. Come with me. I'll get you food. It took 10 minutes of gentle coaxing, but eventually, the boy crept out from behind the dumpster. He was smaller than she'd first thought, maybe only 4 or 5, and he moved like someone who expected to be hurt at any moment. Asha's social work training kicked in. This was a child who'd experienced trauma, possibly abuse, definitely neglect in some form. The only place open at 3 in the morning was a 24-hour convenience store 3 blocks away. Asha led the boy there, hyper-aware of how this must look. A black woman with a clearly Asian child who didn't speak English, shopping in the middle of the night. The clerk watched them with suspicious eyes as Asha gathered milk, bread, peanut butter, bananas, and a package of cookies. Lost? The clerk asked pointedly. Family emergency, Asha replied shortly, handing over $23 she couldn't really afford to spend. His uncle's meeting us. It was a lie, but it was a lie that got them out of the store without further questions. The boy clutched the bag of cookies like it was treasure, and Asha saw him sneak one into his mouth before they'd even left the parking lot. How long had he been without food? Her apartment was small and shabby, but it was clean and safe, and that was all that mattered right now. The boy's eyes went wide as they entered, like he couldn't believe this space belonged to anyone. Asha set him up at her tiny kitchen table and made him a peanut butter sandwich, which he devoured in 4 bites. Then another. Then a third. Slow down, sweetie, Asha said gently. You'll make yourself sick. He didn't understand her words, but something in her tone made him pause. Their eyes met across the table, and Asha saw something in his gaze that took her breath away. Not just fear or hunger, but a desperate, aching hope that someone might actually help him, that someone might actually care. What's your name? She asked, pointing to herself. Asha. Asha. The boy pointed to himself. Yonjun, he said quietly. Yonjun, Asha repeated, and he nodded. Okay, Yonjun. We're going to figure this out, okay? We're going to find your family. But even as she said it, she wondered what kind of family lost a child like this. What kind of family inspired this level of fear when she'd suggested calling the police? What had she just gotten herself into? Yonjun fell asleep on her couch within 20 minutes, his small body finally relaxing into something like safety. Asha covered him with her only spare blanket and sat in her armchair, watching him sleep and trying to figure out her next move. She should call child services in the morning. She should do this by the book, the legal way, the safe way. But something told her that the safe way might be the most dangerous thing she could do for this child. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she watched Yonjun and wondered what storm she'd just invited into her carefully controlled life. The boy shifted in his sleep, murmuring something in Korean, and Asha felt something shift in her chest, a fierce, protective instinct she hadn't felt in years, maybe ever. Outside, Atlanta began to wake up. Sunrise painted her shabby apartment in shades of gold and rose. Yonjun's eyes fluttered open, and for a moment, he looked confused, frightened. Then he saw Asha, and his face relaxed into something almost like trust. Good morning, Asha said softly. Ready for breakfast? The morning passed in a strange, gentle rhythm. Asha used Google Translate to try to communicate with Yonjun, learning that he was 5 years old, that his mother was dead, and that his father was. The translation was unclear, but it seemed to mean working, or possibly busy. When she asked where his father worked, Yonjun's face closed, off, and he wouldn't answer. She noticed other things too. The quality of his clothes, designer labels she recognized from the department stores she window shopped but could never afford. The way he held his fork, with manners too refined for a 5-year-old. The way he flinched at loud noises but showed no fear of the strangers visible through her window. He was afraid of something specific, something particular. "We need to find your home," Asha said around noon, and Yonjun's expression became guarded. "Your father must be worried about you." Through Google Translate and patient gesturing, Yonjun eventually agreed to show her where he lived. They took the bus. Asha couldn't afford an Uber, and Yonjun seemed terrified of taxis, and the boy directed her through gestures and nods. North, always north, into neighborhoods that got progressively wealthier with each block. By the time they reached Buckhead, Asha's unease had grown into something closer to dread. This wasn't just wealthy. This was wealthy. Old money and new money mixing in mansions behind gates and walls. What was a child from this world doing alone in an alley in one of Atlanta's most dangerous neighborhoods? Yonjun stopped suddenly in front of a massive property surrounded by a 12-foot wall, topped with security cameras. The gate was iron and imposing, and Asha could see armed guards visible through the bars. Her blood ran cold. "This is your home?" she asked, though she already knew the answer. Yonjun nodded, but he didn't look relieved. He looked terrified. Before Asha could decide what to do, the gate opened, and 6 men emerged. They were Asian, built like soldiers, and they moved with a coordinated precision that spoke of military training. Every single one of them was armed. Asha instinctively stepped in front of Yonjun, her heart racing. The men surrounded them in a smooth, practiced formation that made escape impossible. One of them spoke rapidly in Korean into a radio, and Yonjun responded in a small, frightened voice. "English," a voice called from beyond the gate. "Speak English, so our guest understands what's happening." The guards parted, and a man stepped through. He was tall, at least 6'2", and moved with the kind of controlled grace that came from absolute confidence in one's ability to handle any threat. He was probably in his mid-30s, with sharp features, dark eyes that missed nothing, and an expression of such cold calculation that Asha felt her breath catch. This was Yonjun's father. She knew it instantly, not just from the resemblance, but from the way Yonjun tensed, the way he seemed to shrink into himself, despite obviously wanting to run toward the man. "So," the man said, his English perfect but accented, "you found my son." "He was alone," Asha said, fighting to keep her voice steady. "In an alley, crying. I couldn't just leave him there." The man's eyes moved over her, assessing every detail with the precision of someone used to identifying threats. "No, you couldn't. Could you?" It wasn't a question. "Do you know who I am?" "You're Yonjun's father." "I am Jang Wuang," he said, and something in the way he said it made Asha understand that this name should mean something to her, that people who knew this name probably reacted with fear. "And you are?" "Asha Washington. I work at Rosie's Diner on 5th Street. I was walking home from my shift when I heard Yonjun crying." "Rosie's Diner," Wang repeated, as if filing away the information. 5th Street. That's quite far from here. My son traveled a long way." "He was scared," Asha said. "He didn't want me to call the police." Something flickered in Wang's expression. Approval, perhaps, or at least acknowledgement that she'd done the right thing. Very wise of you. The police would have complicated matters significantly. One of the guards spoke in Korean, and Wang responded sharply, never taking his eyes off Asha. Yonjun tugged at her jacket, saying something urgent in Korean. Asha looked down at him, seeing the desperation in his eyes. He says you were kind to him, Wang translated, that you gave him food, that you let him sleep safely. His eyes hardened. Did you touch my son inappropriately? What? No. Asha's shock was genuine and apparently convincing, because Wang's stance relaxed slightly. Did you take anything from him? Money, jewelry, identification? He didn't have anything, just the clothes he was wearing. Did you contact anyone about finding him? Post on social media, call friends, make any record of his presence in your home? No. He was so scared, and I didn't know what to do. I was going to figure it out this morning, but he agreed to show me where he lived, so we came here. Wang studied her for a long moment, and Asha felt like he could see through her skin to everything she was, everything she'd ever done, every secret she'd ever kept. It was the most unsettling feeling she'd ever experienced. You will come inside, he said finally. We will talk. I should go. That was not a request, Miss Washington. The guards closed in slightly, and Asha understood with perfect clarity that refusing wasn't an option. She'd stepped into something far bigger and more dangerous than she'd imagined, and the only way out was through. She took Yonjun's hand. The boy gripped her fingers like a lifeline, and followed Jang Wuang through the gate into a world she'd never been meant to see. The mansion was stunning, all marble and dark wood, and art that probably cost more than Asha would earn in her entire lifetime. But she barely noticed the luxury. She was too focused on the armed men positioned at every corner, the security cameras tracking their movement, the sense of barely controlled violence that permeated every inch of this place. Wang led her to an office that looked like something out of a movie. Massive desk, leather furniture, walls lined with books in multiple languages. He gestured to a chair, and Asha sat, still holding Yonjun's hand. The boy climbed into her lap without hesitation, and she saw something flash in Wang's eyes. Surprise? Pain. It was gone too quickly to identify. Yonjun, Wang said, his voice gentler now. Go with Dong-hyun. He'll get you cleaned up and fed. A guard appeared in the doorway, younger than the others, with kinder eyes. Yonjun looked at Asha, seeking permission, and her heart broke a little. This child trusted her more than his own father. It's okay, she said softly. I'll be right here. Yonjun left reluctantly, looking back 3 times before the door closed. The moment they were alone, the temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. Wang's gentle father expression disappeared, replaced by something cold and calculating and deadly. Now, he said, sitting behind his desk, with the casual confidence of a king on his throne. Tell me exactly what happened. Leave nothing out. Asha told him everything. The alley, the crying, her decision to help, the night at her apartment, the morning, the journey here. Wang listened without interrupting, his face betraying nothing. When she finished, silence stretched between them like a blade. You understand what you've seen here, Wang said finally. The security, the guards, the weapons. You're an intelligent woman, Miss Washington. What conclusion have you drawn? Asha met his eyes. That Yonjun's father is someone powerful, someone dangerous, someone who has enemies that would hurt a child. Very good. And yet you brought him back. You didn't try to leverage this situation for money or advantage. Why? Because he's a child who needed help. That's it. That's the only reason. Wang leaned back in his chair, steepling his fingers. Do you know what I do for a living, Miss Washington? No. And I don't want to know. That earned her the ghost of a smile. Wise again. But you need to understand the position you're in. You've seen my home, my security, my face. You know my name and my son's name. You know things that people have died for knowing." Fear spiked through Asha's chest, but she refused to let it show. "Then you'll have to trust that I'm not stupid enough to talk about things that would get me killed." "Trust." Wang said the word like it was foreign to him. "Do you know how few people I trust, Miss Washington? I'm guessing it's not a long list." "You would be correct." He stood, walking to the window that overlooked the grounds. "My son ran away 3 nights ago. He slipped past my security during a shift change, clever boy, and disappeared into the city. I have had over 50 people searching for him, every resource at my disposal, and a waitress from a diner in the wrong part of town is the one who brings him home." "I'm not just a waitress," Asha said, finding her courage. "I have a degree in social work. I know trauma when I see it. And that little boy is carrying trauma that no 5-year-old should have to bear." Wang turned to face her, and for the first time, she saw past the cold exterior to the man beneath. The pain there was staggering. "His mother died 6 months ago," Wang said quietly. "She was killed because of me, because of what I do, because I couldn't protect her." Yonjun watched it happen. He hasn't spoken more than 10 words to me since. Asha's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "Are you? Most people would say we deserve what we get. People like me. Children never deserve to lose their parents, no matter what those parents do." Something shifted in Wang's expression, a crack in the armor, quickly sealed. "I'm going to have you investigated, Miss Washington, thoroughly. Every detail of your life will be examined. If I find anything suspicious, anything that suggests you're working with my enemies, or planning to use this situation against me, the consequences will be severe. Do you understand?" "I understand. In the meantime, you're free to go, but you will not speak of what you've seen here to anyone. Not friends, not family, not in your diary, or your prayers, or your dreams. This conversation never happened. Yonjun was never missing. You never came to this house. Clear? Crystal, Dong-hyun will drive you home." Wang pressed a button on his desk, and the younger guard appeared. "And Miss Washington? Thank you for bringing my son home." The words were grudging, but they were genuine. Asha nodded and stood to leave, but Yonjun's voice stopped her. The boy had appeared in the doorway, freshly bathed and wearing clean clothes, and he ran straight to Asha, wrapping his arms around her waist. He spoke rapidly in Korean, and Asha saw Wang's jaw tighten. "He wants to know when you'll visit again," he translated. "He wants you to stay for dinner." Asha looked down at Yonjun's hopeful face, then back at Wang's guarded expression. Every instinct told her to run, to get as far away from this dangerous man and his dangerous world as possible. But those same instincts had told her to walk past a crying child, and she'd ignored them then too. "I work most evenings," she said slowly, "but I have Sundays off." Yonjun beamed, and Asha could have sworn she saw relief in Wang's eyes. "Sunday then," he said. "Dong-hyun will pick you up at noon. I can take the bus. My son's safety is worth the price of a car service, Miss Washington. Noon. Don't make me send people to collect you." It was a joke, sort of. Asha left with Dong-hyun, her mind racing with everything that had just happened. She'd walked into that alley looking for a lost child, and found herself entangled with someone powerful and dangerous, and probably criminal. She should be terrified. But all she could think about was Yonjun's smile and the pain in Jang Wuang's eyes when he'd mentioned his dead wife. The drive home was silent. Dong-hyun pulled up outside her building and handed her an envelope. "From Mr. Jang," he said. "Payment for the food and supplies you purchased for Yonjun." Asha opened it and nearly dropped it. $5,000 in cash. This is way too much. Mr. Jang doesn't do things by half measures. Have a good evening, Miss Washington. She stood on the sidewalk, watching the expensive car drive away, holding more money than she'd see in 2 months of double shifts. She should be happy. She should be relieved. Instead, she felt like she'd just signed a contract she didn't fully understand, with a man who could destroy her life with a phone call. Sunday came faster than Asha expected. She spent the week working her shifts, trying to ignore the way she caught glimpses of men who might be watching her, cars that might be following her, the sense that her life was no longer entirely her own. Wang was having her investigated, just like he'd promised. She wondered what he would find. The dead parents, the debt, the loneliness. Nothing interesting. Nothing that would mark her as a threat. She hoped. Dong Hyun arrived at exactly noon, on Sunday, driving a different car, less ostentatious, more practical. The drive to Buckhead felt shorter this time, maybe because Asha knew what waited at the end. The gate opened before they reached it, and Yonjun was waiting on the front steps, bouncing with excitement. He ran to her the moment she stepped out of the car, chattering in Korean and pulling her toward the house. Asha laughed despite her nervousness, letting the little boy lead her inside. Wang waited in the foyer, and Asha noticed he looked different in casual clothes, jeans and a black sweater that somehow made him more dangerous rather than less. "Miss Washington," he greeted her. "Yonjun has been counting the hours since you agreed to visit. Please, call me Asha. Miss Washington makes me feel like I'm at a job interview. Are you not, in a sense?" There was something almost playful in his tone. Being evaluated for the position of trusted associate? Is that what I am? That depends on what my investigation reveals. But you're here, which suggests preliminary results are favorable. They ate lunch, or rather, Yonjun ate while talking non-stop in Korean, occasionally looking to his father to translate something particularly important. Asha learned that Yonjun liked dinosaurs, disliked vegetables, wanted a dog, and thought his father worked too much. She also learned that Wang had the patience of a saint with his son, even as he tried and failed to get the boy to eat his broccoli. It was so normal, so domestic, that Asha almost forgot about the armed guards visible through the windows and the security cameras tracking their every move. After lunch, Yonjun dragged her to his playroom, a space larger than Asha's entire apartment, filled with toys that most children only saw in stores. But what broke her heart was how few of them seemed to be played with. Yonjun went straight to a shelf in the corner and pulled down a worn stuffed elephant, holding it close. "Umma," he said softly, and Asha didn't need a translation. This had been his mother's. She sat on the floor with him, and Yonjun settled into her lap like it was the most natural thing in the world. He started telling her a story in Korean. She didn't understand the words, but she understood the emotion. Grief, longing, fear. She held him while he talked, and when he started to cry, she cried with him. That's how Wang found them 20 minutes later. Asha holding his son, while they both wept for a woman neither of them would see again. She expected him to be angry, to view this as overstepping. Instead, he knelt beside them and pulled Yonjun into his arms, speaking softly in Korean. Yonjun cried harder, and Wang held him tighter, and Asha watched a dangerous man become just a father trying to comfort his broken child. When Yonjun finally fell asleep, exhausted from crying, Wang carried him to his room. Asha waited in the playroom, unsure if she should leave or stay. Wang returned 10 minutes later, his expression unreadable. "He hasn't cried like that since the funeral," Wang said. "I was beginning to think he'd forgotten how." "Grief doesn't disappear. It just goes underground. You speak from experience. I lost both my parents before I was 21. I understand what it's like to be alone." Wang sat in one of the child-sized chairs, looking incongruous and somehow vulnerable. My wife would have liked you. She always said I surrounded myself with people who were afraid of me, when what I needed were people who would tell me the truth. What happened to her? Asha asked, then immediately regretted it. I'm sorry. That's none of my business. No, but you'll find out eventually if you continue visiting. Better you hear it from me. He stared at the wall, not seeing it. Her name was Minji. We met in Seoul when we were both young and stupid, and thought we could outrun our family's expectations. We couldn't. I took over my father's business, and she became the wife of a man who deals in things that exist in the shadows. She knew what I was, what I did, and she loved me anyway. His voice cracked on the last word, and Asha saw the raw grief there. She was coming home from the market. Wrong place, wrong time. A car bomb meant for me. She died instantly. Yonjun was in the back seat. The blast knocked their car into a pole, but it was far enough away that he survived with just cuts and bruises. Physically, anyway. I'm so sorry, Asha whispered. The man responsible is dead now. It doesn't bring her back. No, it never does. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Wang looked at her directly. Why do you keep coming back? You know what I am now. You've seen enough to understand that being close to me and my son is dangerous. So why? Asha thought about it, really thought about it. Because Yonjun needs someone who isn't afraid. Someone who can love him without the weight of your world on their shoulders. And because I think you need that too. I'm not looking for love, Miss Washington. I'm not offering it. I'm offering friendship, that's all. Wang stood, and for a moment Asha thought he was going to ask her to leave and never come back. Instead, he extended his hand. Friends, then. But understand, my friends are few, and their lives are complicated by association with me. Are you sure you want that complication? Asha shook his hand. His grip was firm, warm, and she felt electricity run through her that she definitely shouldn't be feeling. I'm sure. Over the next 6 weeks, Asha's Sundays became sacred. Dong-hyun picked her up at noon, and she spent the afternoon with Yonjun, slowly winning the boy's trust and watching him begin to heal. Wang was often there, sometimes working in his office, but frequently joining them for lunch or watching while Asha and Yonjun played. She learned things about Jang Wuang that complicated her understanding of him. He was ruthless in business, yes, but he was also fair. He took care of the people who worked for him, ensuring their families were provided for, their children educated. He had codes he lived by, lines he wouldn't cross, and while those lines were different from Asha's, they existed. She also learned that he was lonely, isolated by power and position and the things he'd done to get where he was. Minji had been his anchor, and without her, he was adrift in a sea of people who feared him, respected him, obeyed him, but didn't truly know him. Asha was beginning to know him, and that was dangerous in ways she couldn't fully articulate. It was the 8th Sunday when everything changed. Asha arrived to find the house in chaos, guards running, phones ringing, Wang in his office shouting orders in Korean. Dong-hyun looked stressed, and when Asha asked what was happening, he just shook his head. Yonjun found her in the foyer and grabbed her hand, pulling her toward his playroom. But they didn't make it. Wang emerged from his office, saw them, and his expression was terrifying. Get Yonjun to the safe room, he ordered Dong-hyun. Then to Asha. You need to leave. Now. What's happening? Something that doesn't concern you. Go home and stay there until I contact you. But before she could respond, an explosion rocked the house. Not close, somewhere on the property near the gate, but close enough that the windows rattled and alarms started blaring. Yonjun screamed, and Asha instinctively pulled him close, shielding him with her body. Basement, Wang barked. Everyone. Now. What followed was chaos. Guards running with weapons drawn, the sound of gunfire in the distance, Wuang issuing orders while moving his son and Asha toward a concealed door she'd never noticed before. They descended into a basement that was more bunker than storage space, reinforced walls, security monitors, enough supplies to last weeks. Other people were already there. Household staff, some of Wuang's men, a few women Asha didn't recognize. Yonjun clung to her, trembling, and Wuang moved to the security monitors, watching his property turn into a battlefield. "What's happening?" Asha asked again. Wang's jaw was tight. "A rival. Jang Wuang. He's been testing my territory for months, and now he's making his move. He attacked your home? With your son here? That's precisely why he attacked now. He knows Yonjun is my greatest weakness." Wuang looked at his son, and Asha saw fear there. Real, genuine fear. "I shouldn't have let you visit. I shouldn't have let anyone get close. This is what happens when I do." "All right, let me pause here for a second. If you're as invested in Asha and Yonjun's safety as I am, smash that like button right now. And subscribe if you believe in second chances, because Wuang is about to face a choice that will define who he really is. Drop a comment telling me what time you're watching this. I want to know if you're team Daylight Binge or Midnight Story Session. Now, back to the chaos. The attack lasted 47 minutes. 47 minutes of gunfire and shouting, and Yonjun crying into Asha's shoulder, while Wuang coordinated his defense with cold, calculated precision. When silence finally fell, Wuang emerged from the bunker first, weapon drawn, leaving strict orders that no one else move until he gave the all-clear. He returned 15 minutes later, blood on his shirt and a hard expression that made Asha's stomach drop. "It's over. They're either dead or gone." "Casualties?" one of his men asked. "2 of ours wounded, none dead. 7 of theirs dead, 3 captured." Wuang looked at Asha, and she saw something in his eyes that chilled her. "This is what my world looks like, Miss Washington. Still think friendship is worth the risk?" Asha wanted to say no, wanted to grab her things and run and never look back. But Yonjun was still clinging to her, and she could feel how hard he was shaking, and she knew that walking away now would be one more abandonment in a young life, already filled with too many. "Yes," she said quietly. "I do." Wuang stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then you need to understand what that means. Come with me." He led her, with Yonjun still attached to her side, to his office. The house showed signs of the attack, but nothing too terrible. Bullet holes in walls, broken windows, damaged furniture. It could have been so much worse. In his office, Wuang poured himself a drink, downed it, then poured another. "Jang Wuang won't stop." This was a message, a declaration of war, which means everyone close to me is now a target, especially you. "Me? Why me?" "Because he'll have done his research, and he knows you visit every Sunday. He knows my son has attached himself to you. He'll assume you're important to me, which makes you leverage." Wang's expression was grim. "I can offer you 2 options. 1, you leave now, tonight, and we never see each other again. I'll have my people monitor you for a few months to ensure Jin doesn't pursue you, but you'll be out of this. Or 2, you accept protection, full-time security, relocation to a safe house on the property, and total commitment to being in our lives." Asha's head spun. Those are extreme options. This is an extreme situation. There's no middle ground anymore. You're either all in or all out, because anything in between gets you killed. "What do you want me to do?" Wuang looked at his son, who had finally stopped shaking, but still held Asha's hand like a lifeline. "I want you to choose what's best for you. Not for Yonjun, not for me. For you." It was the most honest thing he'd ever said to her. Asha looked around the office, at the luxury that came with blood money, at the monitors showing armed guards patrolling the grounds, at the man who could order deaths as easily as ordering dinner. Then she looked down at Yonjun, whose dark eyes held so much hope and so much fear. "If I stay," Asha said slowly, "I need to be able to keep working. Keep some part of my normal life. Impossible. Jin will target your workplace. Then I quit the diner. But I need to do something. I can't just sit around being protected. I'll lose my mind." Wang considered this. "I have several legitimate businesses: property management, import-export, investments. You have a social work degree. I could use someone to oversee charitable initiatives, establish a foundation. Make the work real, not just for appearance. You want me to run your charity operations? I want you to have purpose. And yes, it would benefit my reputation. But the work would be genuine. You'd have a real budget, real authority, the ability to make actual change." It was manipulation, but it was also an olive branch, a way for her to stay without compromising everything she believed in. Asha took a deep breath. "I need 24 hours to think about it." "You have 12. After that, I'm moving Yonjun to a secure location, and the window to join us closes. That's not fair. Fair doesn't exist in my world, Asha. Only safe and unsafe. Choose." Dong Hyun drove her home, but this time 2 additional cars followed, security that would remain outside her building until she made her decision. Asha paced her tiny apartment, looking at her simple life and trying to imagine giving it up for something so complicated, so dangerous, so completely insane. But she kept coming back to Yonjun's face, to the way he'd held her during the attack, to the progress she'd seen in him over the past 2 months, the smiles, the laughter, the way he was slowly learning to trust again. If she left, she'd be abandoning him just like everyone else in his young life had abandoned him. And then there was Wang. Somewhere in the past 8 weeks, he'd stopped being just Yonjun's dangerous father and had become something else. Something complicated. Asha found herself thinking about him at odd moments, the way he smiled when Yonjun laughed, the gentleness in his hands when he tucked his son into bed, the intelligence in his eyes when they discussed books or philosophy or the nature of morality. She was falling for him. God help her. She was falling for a man whose hands were stained with blood. The 12 hours passed in a blur of anxiety and second-guessing and prayer. When Dong Hyun arrived at her door, Asha had packed 2 suitcases with everything that mattered and left a note for her landlord. "I'm in," she said simply. Dong Hyun smiled, the first real smile she'd seen from him. "Good. Mr. Jang will be pleased. So will Yonjun." The guest house on Wang's property was larger than her apartment had been, and infinitely nicer. It had its own kitchen, living room, bedroom, and bathroom, plus a panic room that made Asha's skin crawl. But it was comfortable, and more importantly, it was close to Yonjun. Wang came to see her that evening, after she'd settled in. He looked exhausted, older than his years, and Asha realized he probably hadn't slept since the attack. "Thank you," he said simply, "for staying. For Yonjun." Just for Yonjun? The question hung between them, loaded with everything they hadn't said. Wang stepped closer, and Asha's breath caught. He raised his hand, hesitated, then gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Get some rest," he said softly. "Tomorrow, we start planning Jin's downfall. And your new job. And whatever this is between us." "What is this between us?" "I have no idea. But I think we should find out." He left before she could respond, and Asha stood in her new living room, wondering what the hell she'd just agreed to. But when Yonjun knocked on her door 10 minutes later, asking if she could read him a bedtime story, She knew she'd made the right choice. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Asha started learning about Wang's legitimate businesses, which were surprisingly extensive and mostly legal. She met with lawyers, accountants, and consultants about establishing a foundation focused on helping at-risk youth and families. The irony wasn't lost on her that she was using money earned through illegal means to help people escape the circumstances that often led to illegal means. But Wang gave her free rein, and the work was fulfilling in ways her diner job had never been. She had resources now, real resources, to make actual change. It felt like purpose. She also spent time with Yonjun every day. The boy bloomed under consistent attention and love, slowly becoming the child he should have been all along. He laughed more, played more, started attending a private school with security that would make most government officials jealous. Asha attended parent-teacher conferences with Wang, and they fell into a rhythm that felt disturbingly like co-parenting. And then there were the evenings. After Yonjun went to bed, Wang and Asha often found themselves in his study, talking about everything and nothing. He told her about growing up in Seoul, about the weight of family, expectations, about the moment he'd chosen his path and couldn't turn back. She told him about her parents, her dreams, the student debt that had trapped her in a life she'd never wanted. "I could pay that off," Wang said one evening. "Your debt? It would be nothing to me." "I know, but I need to do it myself. Some things you can't accept as gifts without losing yourself. Even from a friend? Especially from a friend who I'm already dependent on for housing and employment." He smiled at that, a real smile that made him look younger, less burdened. "You're the only person who's ever accused me of being too generous. That's because everyone else is afraid you'll stop being generous if they complain. And you're not afraid? Terrified. But that doesn't mean I'll compromise who I am." Something shifted in his expression, heat and admiration and hunger all mixed together. "Good. Never compromise, Asha. Never become smaller for anyone. Not even me." The air between them crackled, with tension, and Asha knew that if she stayed much longer, they'd cross a line they couldn't uncross. She stood to leave, and Wang stood with her, close enough that she could feel the warmth radiating from his body. "Good night, Wang," she said softly. "Good night, Asha." But as she turned to go, he caught her hand. "Wait. There's something you should know. Jin Woo-hook is escalating. He's hit 3 of my operations in the past week. This isn't just business anymore. It's personal." "What does that mean for us?" "It means the danger is increasing. It means I might have to do things you won't approve of, things that will remind you what I really am." Asha squeezed his hand. "I know what you are. I've always known. That doesn't change what I feel." "And what do you feel?" It was the question she'd been avoiding, but standing there in the dim light of his study with his hand, warm in hers, she couldn't avoid it anymore. "I feel like I'm falling for you, which is probably the stupidest thing I've ever admitted." Wang pulled her closer, his other hand coming up to cup her face. "Then we're both stupid. Because I've been falling for you since you stood in that alley with my son and chose kindness over common sense." He kissed her then, soft at first, questioning, then deeper when she responded. It was a kiss that tasted like longing and danger and hope all mixed together. When they finally broke apart, Asha was breathless. "This is a bad idea," she whispered. "Terrible idea," he agreed. "We're going to do it anyway, aren't we?" "Yes. Yes, we are." For 3 weeks, they existed in a bubble of cautious happiness. Wang still ran his empire, still made decisions that resulted in violence Asha didn't witness, but knew about. But he also came home for dinner, read stories to his son, and held Asha while they watched movies after Yonjun went to bed. They were building something, fragile and complicated, and probably doomed, but real. Then Jin Woo-hook made his move. It happened at a business dinner, legitimate business, at an upscale restaurant in downtown Atlanta. Wang had been meeting with investors for one of his legal ventures, and he'd brought Asha as his date. She wore a dress he'd bought her, elegant and expensive, and felt like an imposter among the wealthy elite. They were halfway through dinner when Jin Woo-hook walked in. Asha had never met him, but she knew him instantly from the way Wang tensed and the way his security team subtly repositioned themselves. Jin was older than Wang, maybe 50, with silver in his hair and eyes like a shark. He approached their table with the confidence of a man who feared nothing. "Jang Wuang," he said in accented English, "how unexpected to see you here." "Jin Woo-hook." Wang's voice was cold. "This is a private dinner." "Is it?" Jin's eyes moved to Asha, and she felt violated by his gaze. "And who is this lovely woman? Not your late wife, certainly. Someone new? How quickly you move on." Wang stood slowly, and Asha saw murder in his eyes. "Careful, Jin. You're dangerously close to saying something you can't take back." "Am I? I'm simply making conversation, getting to know your companion. What's your name, dear?" "None of your business," Asha said, finding her voice. Jin laughed. "Spirit. I like that. Tell me, does she know what you do, Wang? Does she know how many people you've killed? How many families you've destroyed? Or do you keep that part hidden when you play house with your little American girlfriend? Leave. Now." Wang's hand moved toward his jacket, where Asha knew he kept a weapon. "Or what? You'll kill me in a restaurant full of witnesses? I don't think so. You've gone soft, Wang. Love does that to a man. Makes him weak. Makes him vulnerable." Jin leaned closer. "Makes him easy to destroy." What happened next happened fast. Jin signaled to his men, who'd positioned themselves around the restaurant. Weapons appeared. Screaming started. Wang's security reacted instantly, pushing Asha under the table while returning fire. She crouched there, hands over her ears, as bullets shattered glass and bodies hit the floor. Then Wang was there, pulling her up, dragging her toward the kitchen. "Move! Move!" he shouted, shielding her body with his as they ran. Behind them, she heard Jin laughing, actually laughing, as chaos erupted. They made it to the kitchen, out the back door, into an alley where Dong Hyun waited with a car. Wang shoved Asha inside and climbed in after her, and they peeled away from the restaurant as sirens approached. "Are you hurt?" Wang demanded, running his hands over her, checking for blood. No, I don't think so." "Wang, what just happened?" Jin just declared open war, in front of witnesses, with media present. Wang's jaw was tight. "He's not just trying to take my territory anymore. He's trying to destroy everything I've built. My reputation, my businesses, my life. What are we gonna do? We?" He looked at her, and she saw fear there, not for himself, but for her. "You're going into hiding, somewhere Jin can't find you, somewhere safe until this is over." "No, I'm not leaving Yonjun. I'm not leaving you." "Asha." "No." Her voice was sharp. "You don't get to make this decision for me. I chose this. I chose you. I chose this life. You don't get to push me away the first time it gets really dangerous. People are going to die, Asha. A lot of people. And I'm going to be the one killing them. I know. And I'll have to live with loving someone who does that. But I'd rather live with that than live without you." Wang pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. She felt him shaking. This man who commanded armies, who inspired fear in his enemies, shaking like a leaf. "I can't lose you too. I can't survive losing someone else I love. Then don't lose me. Fight for me. Fight for us. Fight to win so we can have a future." He pulled back, cupping her face in his hands. "I love you. I shouldn't. It's the worst possible thing for both of us. But I do. I love you. I love you too. So let's survive this together. Before we find out how this war ends, I need to know, are you Team Asha, or do you think she should have run when she had the chance? Subscribe if you believe love is worth fighting for, even when the odds are impossible. Comment, stay, if you'd make the same choice she did. Now, let's finish this story. The war with Jin Woo Hook lasted 6 brutal weeks. Asha was moved to a secure location, a compound outside the city, with enough security to hold off a small army. Yonjun came with her, along with his nanny, guards, and everything needed to keep a 5-year-old safe and occupied during what amounted to a siege. Wang visited when he could, usually late at night, often with new injuries that made Asha's heart stop. He didn't share details, and she didn't ask. But she could see the toll it was taking, the darkness growing in his eyes, the weight settling on his shoulders. The way he held Yonjun a little longer each time, like he was afraid it might be the last. The turning point came on a Tuesday. Wang arrived at the compound in the middle of the day, which immediately told Asha something major had happened. He looked exhausted, but triumphant, and there was blood on his hands he hadn't bothered to wash off. "It's over," he said. "Jin is dead. His organization is scattered. The threat is neutralized." Asha should have felt relief. Instead, she felt sick. "How? Do you really want to know?" "No, but I need to know. If we're going to do this, I need to know what you're capable of." Wang sat down heavily, and for the first time since she'd met him, he looked old. "I went to his house, just me and 2 of my most trusted men. We walked in through his security like it was nothing, because half his guards were on my payroll, and I killed him myself. Shot him 3 times while he begged for mercy. Then I made sure everyone who'd ever worked for him understood that coming after me or mine would result in the same fate. Did you feel anything when you killed him? Satisfaction, relief, and guilt that I didn't feel more." He looked at her. "Does that change things, knowing I'm capable of that?" Asha thought about it honestly. "It terrifies me, but it doesn't change how I feel about you. Is that wrong? Should it? I don't know. Probably. But I'm grateful it doesn't." They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Yonjun burst into the room, saw his father, and launched himself into Wang's arms. The little boy chattered in Korean, and Wang responded softly, his face transforming into something gentle and loving and so different from the man who'd just confessed to murder. This was her life now, this contradiction. This complicated, dangerous, beautiful mess. "Can we go home?" Asha asked. "Yes, we can go home." Moving back to the mansion felt like exhaling after holding her breath for weeks. But things had changed. Wang had changed. He was quieter now, more careful, more protective. He'd tasted what it meant to nearly lose everything, and he was determined not to let it happen again. 2 months after Jin's death, Asha woke up to find Wang sitting on the edge of her bed, watching her with an expression she couldn't read. "I've been thinking," he said, "about what kind of life I want for Yonjun, what kind of example I want to set. Okay. I can't walk away from everything. Too many people depend on me, and my enemies would see it as weakness. But I can transition. Move more resources into legitimate business, reduce the illegal operations to bare minimum, build something Yonjun can inherit without shame." Asha sat up, taking his hand. "That's going to take time. Years, probably. I know. But I have motivation now. You, Yonjun, a future worth building toward." He pulled a small box from his pocket, and Asha's heart stopped. "Marry me. Not because it's safe or smart or makes sense. Marry me because I love you, and I want to build that future with you as my wife. The ring was beautiful, elegant and understated, nothing ostentatious. Very unlike what she'd expected from a man of Wang's wealth. You chose this yourself? I did, because I know you. You'd hate something flashy. He smiled nervously. Is that a yes? That's a yes. He kissed her then, and Asha felt like maybe, just maybe, they had a chance at something real, something lasting, something worth all the danger and complication and fear. The wedding was small, just Yonjun, Donghyun, a few of Wang's most trusted people, and a judge who asked no questions about the groom's background. Asha wore a simple white dress, and Yonjun was their ring bearer, taking his job so seriously that everyone smiled. When Wang slid the ring onto her finger, he whispered, "Thank you for seeing past what I am to who I want to be. Thank you for becoming someone worthy of that vision." Their first year of marriage was an adjustment. Wang kept his word about transitioning his business, but it was slow and sometimes violent. Rivals tested him, thinking marriage had made him soft. They learned quickly that Jang Wuang was still dangerous, perhaps more so now that he had something real to protect. Asha threw herself into the foundation work, building programs that actually helped people. She hired social workers, opened community centers, funded scholarships. She took the money that came from darkness and used it to create light. It wasn't redemption exactly, but it was something. And Yonjun thrived. He started calling Asha Uma, mother, 6 months after the wedding, and she cried for an hour. He was doing well in school, making friends, learning to be a child instead of a traumatized victim. His nightmares decreased, his smiles increased, and watching him healed something in both Asha and Wang. 18 months after that night in the alley, Asha stood in the nursery she'd just finished decorating and placed her hand on her growing belly. She was 4 months pregnant, and she still couldn't quite believe it. A daughter, the doctor had said, a little girl who would grow up knowing her father, but hopefully never seeing his darkest side. Wang found her there, standing by the window, and wrapped his arms around her from behind. "What are you thinking about? How strange life is. How one choice can change everything. If I'd walked past that alley, if I'd ignored Yonjun's crying, none of this would exist. Do you regret it? Any of it?" Asha leaned back against him, feeling his strength, his warmth, his love. "Not even a little bit. You? Never. You saved my son. You saved me. You gave us a reason to be better. You're giving yourself too little credit. You chose to be better. I just showed you it was possible." They stood together in the nursery, planning their future, building their family, creating something beautiful out of circumstances that should have destroyed them. It wasn't a fairy tale. There was still danger, still violence at the edges of their world, still nights when Wang came home with darkness in his eyes. But there was also love, so much love, for each other, for Yonjun, for the daughter who would arrive in 5 months and complete their family. They'd built something real from a foundation of kindness shown to a crying child, and Asha had learned that sometimes the most dangerous choice is also the bravest one. Yonjun burst into the nursery, full of energy and excitement, speaking rapid Korean that Asha mostly understood now. Wang laughed and responded, then translated for her benefit. He wants to know if his sister will like dinosaurs, because he has many to share with her. "I'm sure she'll love them," Asha said, ruffling Yonjun's hair, "and she'll love you most of all." As the afternoon sun filled the nursery with golden light, Asha felt a peace she'd never imagined possible. Her life had become something she never could have predicted, complicated and dangerous and unconventional, but it was hers, They were hers. This strange, beautiful, impossible family. And it had all started with a simple choice to show kindness when the world expected her to look away. In the end, that's what saved them all. Not Wang's power, or Asha's love, or Yonjun's resilience, but a single moment of compassion in a dark alley. One choice that rippled outward, changing lives, building futures, proving that even in the darkest places, kindness could be the most powerful force of all. Wang pulled both Asha and Yonjun close, his arms around his family, and for a moment, he wasn't a dangerous man with blood on his hands. He was just a father and a husband, holding the people who'd given his life meaning. "I love you," he said softly. "Both of you. All of you." "We love you too," Asha replied, and meant it with every fiber of her being. Outside, Atlanta continued its rhythm, loud and messy and beautiful. Inside the mansion, behind walls and security and carefully maintained distance from the worst of Wang's world, a family existed. Imperfect, complicated, born from circumstances that should have ended in tragedy. But sometimes, the most unlikely stories have the happiest endings. And sometimes, kindness is its own reward, one that keeps giving long after the initial act is forgotten. Asha Washington had given food to a crying child, not knowing he was the son of a Korean Mafia boss. In doing so, she'd found a family, a purpose, and a love she'd never dreamed possible. She'd walked into danger and found her home, and that made all the difference. If this story touched your heart the way it touched mine, please hit that like button and subscribe to this channel. Share this with someone who believes in the power of kindness, even when it's dangerous, even when it's complicated, even when the world says to look away. Comment below and tell me, would you have stopped to help? Would you have stayed when things got dangerous? What choice would you have made? Because in the end, we're all just one choice away from changing everything. One moment of compassion away from finding our purpose. One act of kindness away from discovering love in the most unexpected places. Thank you for watching. And remember, sometimes the bravest thing you can do is simply care when no one expects you to. Until next time, keep choosing kindness. You never know whose life you might save. You never know what beautiful future you might build. And who knows? Maybe your act of compassion will be the beginning of your own impossible love story.